Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
If you could have any superpower, which one would you pick? Maybe seeing into the future, reading people's minds, flying? Hey, this is Jen. You're listening to the Bible for Busy People podcast, and I always thought that being able to shapeshift into different people would be a really cool superpower to have. Now, sometimes the superpower comes in finding out what's going to happen, and that gives you confidence for the moment that you're in. And that's what we're reading about today as we read about dreams this week. Gideon, the person we're reading about, was given a special gift by God in preparation for what would have been an impossible battle if God had not been involved. Up to this point in Gideon's story, he'd been told by an angel to go in the strength you have to save Israel from the Midianites. He disputed that he was the youngest of the weakest clan. 3 times he asked for proof from God, and each time God responded with a miracle. Also, Gideon had torn down an altar to Baal, yes, among the Israelites who had not been faithful to God, and built an altar to God instead. When the townspeople found out, they tried to kill him, but his father spoke up saying that Baal could protect himself. Thereafter, Gideon was called Jerub-Baal by his community, or let Baal contend. Obviously, Baal didn't. This summary is a little out of order, but you can go back and read through Judges 6 to get the full picture. We're starting today in Judges chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "Early in the morning, Jerub-Baal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, 'You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead.' So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, 'There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go.' So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, 'Separate those who lap the water with their tongues, as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink.' 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, 'With the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home.' So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300, who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others." So we know that Gideon was going into all this with some trepidation already feeling like the weakest and the least, and that may have been true. But then God says, go weaker, go fewer. Apparently, according to the Enduring Word commentary, though I can't seem to find it in the text, they were already way outnumbered. The Midianite army count was at 135,000 to their 33,000. Then 22,000 left just out of fear, and I bet Gideon wished he could go too, at least a little bit. And then down from 10,000 to just 300. I don't know why the men who lapped were chosen over the ones who knelt. The Enduring Word commentary suggests that they were better soldiers because they kept their eyes up. But God would not let Gideon or Israel take the credit for the victory. It had to be God's. God was intervening to save the people. There was no chance for them to feel self-sufficient without God or to credit God's victory to a false god like Baal. Have you ever felt like you were out of resources and options and then God showed up? God does amazing things with the little or nothing we have to offer. Now reading on in verse 9, it says, "During that night the Lord said to Gideon, 'Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen to what they are saying. Afterward, you will be encouraged to attack the camp.' So he and Purah, his servant, went down to the outposts of the camp. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other eastern peoples had settled in the valley thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. 'I had a dream,' he was saying. 'A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed.' His friend responded, 'Get this, This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands. When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." So God sent Gideon into enemy territory with the purpose of reassuring him before the battle. Now, this is something interesting. A loaf of barley bread was only eaten by the very poor. It acknowledged Gideon's humble position, but he still invoked fear because God was on his side. A quote from Bible commentator F.B. Meyer says, "A cake of barley bread might be a worthless thing, but if God were behind it, it would upset a tent." The dream wasn't even Gideon's, but it was what built up so much courage in Gideon that he was able to move forward with the plan. God cared enough for Gideon to set the scene and position it all for him to hear what he needed to hear. Why would the Midianites even know who he was? This story reminds me of when the Israelites scouted out Jericho in Joshua 2, and Rahab hid the spies and told them that all of Jericho was actually shaking in fear. It also reminds me of when Elisha prayed for the servant's eyes to be open so that he could see God's army surrounding them in 2 Kings 6. There is more going on behind the scenes than we know. Again, it wasn't Gideon or Israelites' less than impressive army. It was God's strength that inspired fear from their enemies. Where are the ways God has gone before you to guide you along the way? Can those memories be guideposts for you when you face other obstacles? Do you think God still meets us in such a way as to give us the confidence and faith we need to keep going? This dream/revelation prompted worship and action. Gideon led and the 300 men followed. It tells us the Israelite army followed directions, divided up into 3 groups, and basically made a lot of noise. In the chaos, the Midianite army turned on each other. Gideon had every reason to be confident. God gave him every reason to be. And he still struggled with fear and doubt. Relatable. But God, again, gave him more confidence, showed him what he needed to do. God can do more with our very little than we can even imagine. And God goes before us to work out details we can't even see. What details are you hoping God is working in your life right now? When was the last time you prayed specifically for your requests or needs? I'll leave you with that. Let's talk again tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.